I thought my husband was cheating. But that second phone I found, it didn't hide another woman, it hid a crime. I was married to a man who laundered millions. And when I found out, they didn't just try to silence him. They came for me. Watched till the end, because the wife they tried to bury became the woman who exposed them all. If you believe truth always wins in the end, hit like, drop a broken heart in the comments, and subscribe for more stories. I remember the weight of that phone, heavier than it should have been, like it carried secrets that didn't belong to me. At first, I thought it was just one of Ethan's old work phones. He worked in finance, long hours, endless calls, spreadsheets I pretended to understand. But this one looked different. Too new, too clean. No scratches, no fingerprints, just hidden. And the way he'd tucked it under his pillow, that wasn't work, that was fear. I sat on the bed, my heart thudding against the silence of our perfect little home. We'd been married for 6 years, 6 years of what I thought was trust, laughter, and love. The kind of marriage people posted about online, all smiles and matching cups. I used his thumb while he was still showering. I don't know what part of me thought that was okay. Maybe the part that had been quietly suspicious for months. The phone unlocked. And that's when everything normal about my life ended. There were no flirty messages, no calls from strange women. Just names I didn't recognize. Falcon, Myra, L7, all with transfers numbers that made my stomach turn. 1 million, 5 million, offshore accounts, Cayman Islands. I scrolled faster. There were voice notes, encrypted, scrambled, but one wasn't locked. A man's voice said, "Tell your wife nothing. If she finds out, she's a loose end." Loose end. Those words sliced right through me. I nearly dropped the phone when the shower stopped. I shoved it under the mattress, my hands trembling. He walked out, towel around his waist, smiling, like he hadn't just changed my entire reality. "Morning, babe," he said, brushing my hair off my face. I forced a smile. "Morning, long week." "Yeah, you know how it is." Except I didn't, not anymore. When he left for work, I called my best friend, Natalie. "I think Ethan's cheating," I whispered. She sighed. "You always think that. He's probably just tired, Lina." "No, it's not that. It's something else, something worse." "Worse than cheating," she laughed nervously. I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone your husband might be working with criminals and you just found proof in your bed? That night, I pretended to sleep. I waited until his breathing slowed, then reached under the mattress. The phone was gone. The next morning, he kissed my forehead and said, "Don't forget to lock the door when you go out." His tone was gentle, but his eyes weren't. Something had shifted. And I realized he knew I knew. The next few days felt like living inside a lie, wrapped in silence. Ethan went about his routine like nothing had happened. Breakfast at 7:30, office at 8, home by 6. The kind of rhythm that used to make me feel safe. Now it felt rehearsed. He started locking his study. He took calls on the balcony, whispering. And every time I caught his eyes, he looked away a second too soon. On Wednesday morning, as I poured his coffee, I asked softly, "You're working a lot lately. Everything okay?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Just clients, don't worry about it." But I was already worried. That night, when he fell asleep on the couch, I slipped into his study. The key was still in his jacket pocket. I'd always been the wife who respected boundaries. Now I was the woman crossing every one of them. Inside his desk, I found files. Ledger sheets with names I didn't recognize. A flash drive labeled A. Cooper Trust. And a sealed envelope with a symbol I'll never forget. A black falcon with its wings spread wide. Before I could open it, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Stop digging, Lina." My breath caught. I looked around the study. The curtains were drawn, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. Another message followed. "You have no idea who you're married to." I froze. The house felt smaller, the air colder. I deleted the messages, locked everything back, and went to bed pretending nothing had happened. But I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying that phrase, "You have no idea who you're married to." The next day, I decided to follow him. He said he had a late client dinner downtown. I waited 15 minutes, then took my car and tailed him quietly. He didn't go downtown. He drove to an abandoned shipping yard near the docks. I parked 2 blocks away and watched as he stepped out, meeting a tall man in a gray coat. They didn't shake hands. They just exchanged something small, a flash drive, and spoke in low, tense voices. When the man left, Ethan stood there for a long time, staring at the ocean. Then he took out his phone, the second one, and threw it into the water. My pulse hammered. He wasn't hiding an affair. He was erasing evidence. When he came home later, I was waiting at the kitchen counter. "How was your dinner?" I asked. He looked startled for a second. "What?" "Your client dinner." "Oh, good, boring." He forced a laugh. And then he reached for me, kissed my forehead like everything was fine, and whispered, "You've been quiet lately. You're not worried about something, are you?" It wasn't a question. It was a warning. That night, I packed a small bag and hid it in my car, just in case. Because if I was right about Ethan, I wasn't married to a businessman. I was living with a criminal. The first knock came just after midnight. Soft, deliberate, the kind of knock that knows exactly what it's doing. Ethan wasn't home. He texted earlier saying, "Emergency at work, don't wait up." I almost didn't answer, but something about the rhythm, slow, spaced, made my stomach twist. When I opened the door, a man in a dark suit stood there, face shadowed by the porch light. "Mrs. Cole?" he asked. His voice was calm, too calm. "Yes," I replied, clutching the edge of the door. He held up a badge. "Detective Miller, I need to ask a few questions about your husband." Relief flickered. A detective meant safety, right? But as he stepped into the light, I noticed the badge wasn't from our city's police department. It was fake. "What's this about?" I asked, my voice tight. He smiled faintly. "Let's not pretend, Mrs. Cole. We both know Ethan's in deeper than you think." Every instinct screamed to slam the door, but I stayed still. "What do you want?" He slipped a small photo from his jacket. It was me, leaving the shipping yard 2 nights ago. "Next time you follow your husband," he said, "you might not come back." My throat went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." He leaned in closer. "Yes, you do. You found something. Maybe you didn't mean to, but now you're part of it." Then he stepped back, his expression softening. "Take my advice, Mrs. Cole. Pack a bag, disappear before he disappears you." He turned and walked away, disappearing into a black car that rolled silently down the street. I stood frozen in the doorway until the engine faded. Then I locked every bolt in the house. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was a bluff. Some scam, maybe, a scare tactic. Until I found the photo again, tucked under my windshield wiper. The message on the back read, "You were warned." That afternoon, I drove straight to Natalie's place. I hadn't told her much before, but now the words came tumbling out. The phone, the texts, the man at the door. She listened in stunned silence. "Lina," she whispered, "you have to go to the police." "I can't," I said. "What if they're part of it? He moves money for people I don't even know exist. What if they're everywhere?" She grabbed my hand. "Then tell me what to do, anything." I shook my head. "Just promise me if something happens to me, you'll tell the truth." Her eyes widened. "Don't say that." But I meant it, because somewhere deep down, I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't come back from. That night when Ethan came home, I watched him carefully, the calm smile, the loosened tie, the small talk about his late meeting. He poured himself a drink. "You okay, babe?" I forced a nod. "Yeah, just tired." He studied me. "You sure? You look scared." I said I'm fine. He sipped his whiskey, eyes never leaving mine. "Good, because fear makes people say stupid things." Then he walked upstairs, leaving his glass half full. That's when I saw it, a thin ring of dirt on the cuff of his shirt. Like he'd been digging. And for the first time, I wondered if he'd already buried something. Or someone. By the time dawn broke, I hadn't slept a second. Every sound, every creak in the walls, every passing car made my heart skip. I sat at the dining table with Ethan's laptop open in front of me, staring at the login screen I wasn't supposed to know existed. He'd left the flash drive labeled A. Cooper Trust in his briefcase that night. I'd waited until he showered, took it, and now it was in the laptop's port, a silent key that could open the world he'd tried to hide from me. I wasn't ready for what I found. The drive wasn't just files. It was access, direct to offshore accounts, coded transactions, and a list of corporations tied to something called Falcon Syndicate. Every transaction had Ethan's initials attached, but the sender was someone else, A. Cooper. Who was Cooper? I clicked one more folder. It opened a set of messages between Ethan and someone labeled Myra. Myra, he wants the final transfer tonight. Ethan, she's starting to ask questions. Myra, then fix it. My stomach turned. Fix it. That wasn't about money, that was about me. I unplugged the drive and shoved it into my coat pocket. I had to think. I needed proof, a plan, something that would keep me alive. By noon, I was parked outside the only person who might help me, a quiet IT consultant named Owen who used to work with Ethan. We met at one of those office holiday dinners where everyone pretends they like each other. He looked surprised to see me. Lina, what are you doing here? I need your help, I said, handing him the flash drive. And please don't ask too many questions. He hesitated. If this has Ethan's name on it, I probably shouldn't. Please, I interrupted, voice cracking. It's my life, just look. He studied me for a second, then nodded and plugged it into his system. Within minutes, his screen filled with data streams and encrypted files. This isn't normal business, he muttered. Falcon Syndicate is blacklisted in half the world. Your husband's name shouldn't be anywhere near this. Then why is it? He didn't answer, just kept typing until a hidden folder opened. Inside it were scanned documents, passports. Ethan's photo, different name, Andrew Cooper. I stared, unable to breathe. He's Cooper, I whispered. Owen turned to me, pale. Lina, if he's using a second identity, you need to get out now. These people don't keep loose ends. But I couldn't just run. Not yet. I needed something that could expose him, not just to save myself, but to destroy whatever empire he was building. Owen transferred the files to a secure drive. Here, this is your insurance. Don't trust anyone, especially not the police. I nodded, clutching the drive like it was oxygen. When I got home that night, Ethan was already there. Dinner on the table, candles lit, music playing. Surprise, he said with that familiar smile, the one that used to melt me. You've been so tense lately. Thought we could use a night in. He poured wine, served pasta, asked about my day. I pretended to play along, hiding the flash drive under my sleeve. But halfway through dinner, he leaned forward. By the way, he said casually, someone saw you with Owen today. My heart stopped. He smiled faintly. You know, people talk. I forced a shaky laugh. He just needed me to sign something for a project. Of course, he said, but if you ever have questions about my work, you can ask me directly. There was a silence, long, sharp, suffocating. Then he reached out and took my hand. I'd hate for misunderstandings to ruin what we have. His thumb pressed against my wrist, and I realized he wasn't holding my hand. He was warning me. That night, after he fell asleep, I whispered to myself, he knows. But I didn't delete the files. I didn't run. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just scared. I was angry. And I was done being the wife who didn't know too much. The next morning, I woke up with a decision. If Ethan wanted to play this game in shadows, I'd meet him there. He wasn't the only one capable of secrets. I called in sick to work and drove to Natalie's apartment, the only place I still felt a fragment of safety. She opened the door, messy bun, coffee in hand, eyes widening when she saw me clutching a duffel bag. "Lina, what happened?" "He knows," I whispered, stepping inside. "Ethan knows I've seen everything. The accounts, the money, everything." Natalie shut the door behind me and took my hand. Okay, breathe. You're safe here. We'll figure this out." But as I exhaled, something in her tone, that too calm, rehearsed tone, made the hair on my neck rise. "How did you know I'd come here?" I asked quietly. She blinked. "What?" "You just seemed ready for me." "Lina," she said, forcing a laugh, "you've been calling me every day for a week. Of course I expected you." It was a good answer, maybe too good. While she made tea, I slipped my phone into her hallway table drawer and hit record. Then I returned to the couch, forcing a shaky smile. "I have proof," I said, "enough to take him down." Natalie froze mid-step. "What proof?" "Files, transfers, fake passports." I lowered my voice. "I'm thinking of going to the press." She turned around slowly, her face tight. "The press? Lina, that's dangerous." "I know, but it's the only way." For a second, she just stood there. Then she said something that chilled me to my core. "Don't do anything stupid. Ethan doesn't want to hurt you." I stared at her. "How do you know what Ethan wants?" The color drained from her face. I didn't mean. But I was already moving. I ran to the hallway, grabbed my phone, and stopped the recording. Her voice was there, clear, nervous, guilty. "You're working for him," I whispered. "Lina, listen." "No, you listened while I cried to you. You fed him everything." Her eyes filled with tears. "He said he'd ruin me if I didn't help. I thought I was protecting you." "By betraying me." I didn't wait for an answer. I snatched my bag and stormed out before she could block the door. I drove aimlessly for an hour, my hands shaking on the wheel. I'd lost my husband, my friend, my safety, all in one breath. Finally, I parked in a deserted rest area and opened the laptop again. Owen's files were still intact, but something new flashed on the screen, an email I hadn't opened. From unknown@securemail.com. Subject, "You're running out of time." Message, "If you want to live, meet me at Pier 7 midnight. Come alone." It wasn't signed, but something about it, the urgency, the timing, felt like Owen. At midnight, I parked near Pier 7. The fog was thick, swallowing the glow of the streetlights. I walked carefully along the boards until I saw a shadow waiting by the edge. "Owen," I called. No answer. Then a voice behind me said, "He's not coming." I spun around. Ethan stood there, calm, hands in his coat pockets. "I told you curiosity was dangerous," he said softly. My breath hitched. "You killed him, didn't you?" He tilted his head. "You really think I'd do that?" "After everything I've seen, yes." He sighed, stepping closer. "You were supposed to be different, Lina. Quiet, loyal." "Loyal," I spat. "You lied about everything, your name, your money, your life." His hand shot out, gripping my arm hard. "You don't understand who I work for." "Then tell me." He leaned in close. "No one survives them, not even me." Then just as suddenly, he let go and stepped back. "You have one chance. Delete everything, forget what you saw, and disappear." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'd rather die than live afraid of you." He gave me a small, pitying smile. "That can be arranged." And then, the sound of tires screeching. A car's headlights flared from the darkness. I dove to the ground as a bullet tore through the air, where my head had been. Ethan shouted, "No, not here," before running toward the car. By the time I looked up, they were both gone, leaving only the echo of the gunshot and the smell of salt in the night air. That was the moment I stopped being a victim. He wanted me erased. Now I wanted him exposed. And I was going to burn down every secret he'd ever built. When the car left us in the fog, something snapped inside me, not the broken kind that trembles and crumbles, but the sharp, cold kind that plans. Fear had been my fuel for a week. Now fury took over the wheel. I couldn't risk going to the police. Not anymore. Not when the man who'd pretended to love me had friends with badges, suits, and bullets. So I went to the only place criminals and whistleblowers both respect, the internet. Owen had left me more than files, he'd left a map. Hidden among the code was a chain of contacts, secure servers, and a journalist's alias that popped up again and again. M. Anders, investigative reporter. The name was tied to exposés, to politicians who'd collapsed overnight after his pieces. If anyone could make the Falcon syndicate tremble, it would be him. I called Natalie once, because I had to hear her voice and test if she would pick up, and then I cut the line. I couldn't trust anyone who knew where I slept. I sold my car in cash that afternoon. The same hands that had driven me to collect shopping bags now traded it away as if shedding skin. Using a borrowed phone Owen had encrypted for me, I set up an anonymous account and sent what I had. The passports, the ledger, the voice notes with their thread about loose ends. I created a package so damning it couldn't be ignored, fake identities, shell companies tied to real politicians' campaign accounts, transfers that led to offshore trusts in the same name Ethan kept using. I wrote nothing emotional. Journalists like clean facts. Furious wives like me can get messy and useless when they rage. The next step was survival. Owen's files included a ledger of services, people who could make documents appear real. I didn't have his calm, methodical brain, but I had his contacts. I met a woman at a laundromat whose hands smelled of bleach and promise. She didn't ask questions. She gave me a passport and a name I'd never used. Maya Carter, Canadian-born, 32, with an address that didn't exist. She told me to memorize the backstory. I did. I had to become someone who could vanish. The transformation was small and terrible. I shaved the part of my hair I used to tuck behind my ear. I threw out half my wardrobe and kept only what a woman with no past would wear. When Ethan called that night, his voice sounded like a trapdoor. I let it ring out. A week later, the newsroom email I'd targeted pinged me back through an encrypted channel. M. Anders, a patient, gravel-voiced man who smelled of cigarettes in my imagination, requested a meeting at a cafe that doubled as a bookstore, a neutral place where people who knew secrets liked to pretend they read. We met at 2 in the afternoon. He was older than I'd pictured, hair flecked with gray, eyes that looked like they had seen the worst stories and kept writing anyway. "You sent us a gold mine," he said without preamble. "But if this is bait, you'll regret it." "It's real," I said. "My husband is Andrew Cooper, or Ethan Cole, or whatever name he uses when he wants to buy silence." My voice caught once, then steadied. "They launder money through shell companies, and they donate to politicians who make sure investigations go nowhere." He watched me for a long time. "If what you claim ties into political figures, this is dangerous. We'll need corroboration, bank corroboration, documents signed, witnesses willing to speak under protection." He tapped a cigarette, thought better of it, and spoke softer. "Do you have anyone on the inside, someone who can confirm these transfers?" Owen's name almost spilled from my mouth. I stopped it. I had no proof he was still alive. I had no proof I could trust the system to keep him safe. What I had was the drive and the quiet voice notes and the passports. It was enough to make a journalist start digging. It was not enough to finish the job. "Help me leak it," I said. "Slowly, anonymously, make them panic, make them expose each other." He smiled the kind of smile that makes you feel he's already 7 steps ahead. "Good, we'll drip it. We'll force them to react. When they make a mistake, which they will, we take the next piece. You won't be doing this alone." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope felt thin, like a thread that could be cut by careless fingers. M. Anders handed me a burner phone and a list of instructions. No social media, no contact with former friends, a new bank account in a neutral country, and a safe house he arranged under the name Maya Carter. "You'll sleep there for now," he said. "We rotate security. We can't promise invincibility, but we can promise the next morning." That night, lying in a cot in a place that smelled like coffee and dust, wrapped in cheap blankets, I thought of Ethan, of his neat smile, of slick hands that handled briefcases and bullets with equal ease. I thought of Natalie and how betrayal tastes like salt in the mouth. And I thought of the politicians whose names had caught in Owen's files, senators, a minister who had been photographed with Ethan at a charity gala, a donor with an office found in the shell company's directory. The more I dug, the more I found threads stretching like spider webs into corridors of power. It wasn't just a man laundering money to buy himself luxuries. It was a system that protected men like him, people whose faces were in glossy magazines and whose names were whispered at fundraisers. The Falcon Syndicate wasn't just a crime ring. It was a protection racket dressed in linen suits and soft lighting. The first drip went out 3 days later. A small outlet ran a piece about suspicious donations to a candidate who had been vocal against anti-money laundering reforms. The response was immediate: denials, threats, and crucially, a tiny, sloppy misdirection that implicated a mid-level accountant who'd been on a transfer list. He made a public apology and disappeared from LinkedIn. They were panicking. That panic was exactly what we needed. Panic makes people careless. Careless people leave trails. Trail leads to truth. But as the story spread, I started to notice eyes, not real ones, but a feeling in the room, a pressure like someone pressing a thumb against your back to see if you'd flinch. Someone close was moving pieces around the board. Someone who knew how I thought, how I loved, how I trusted. And then on the third night after the leak, a message blinked on my burner. "We know where you sleep. Stop or you die." My hands went cold, but my voice, the one that had learned to be small and invisible, finally did something it had never done before. It rose. "Bring it on," I whispered into the dark, and for the first time I meant it. The message, "We know where you sleep. Stop or you die," glowed on my burner like a threat and a promise. For a second, I froze. Then the part of me that used to tremble turned still. They had already taken my marriage, my peace, my name. I had nothing left to lose except the truth. I called M. Anders. He picked up on the second ring. "Talk fast," he said. "They found me." A pause, then, "Pack light. Don't take your phone. Go to the train station, locker 22. There's a key there. Inside the locker is a new device, untraceable. Call me when you get to it." He hung up before I could reply. The city looked different when you were running from something invisible. Every car headlight felt like a spotlight, every shadow a pair of eyes. I made it to the train station just before sunrise. Locker 22 was wedged between two broken ones, as if the universe was mocking me. I used the small brass key I'd found taped under the bench near my safe house, just like he'd said. Inside was a phone, a USB, and an envelope. The envelope had a single line written on the back: "When they silence you, play their song louder." I opened the USB drive on a public terminal. It was full of media files, surveillance clips, hidden recordings, leaked phone calls between Ethan and men I'd seen shaking hands with senators and CEOs. He wasn't just laundering money. He was managing hush payments, to journalists, to victims, to anyone who'd seen too much. And then I saw it me. A video of me leaving the Pier 7 dock, recorded from a security cam. Ethan's voice was faint in the background. "Make sure she disappears quietly. No body, no story." My stomach turned. This wasn't just a warning. It was an insurance policy. They'd already framed me for Owen's disappearance, and if I went missing next, it would close the case neatly. I called Anders from the burner. He didn't sound surprised. They're setting up a narrative: the cheating wife, the missing employee, the distraught husband. Classic misdirection. What do we do? We flip the story before they can finish writing it. He sent me a list of instructions, the kind that only people who live in the dark understand. Encrypt the evidence into 5 fragments. Upload each to different secure channels, one of them public. Schedule automatic release, unless I entered a specific password within 24 hours. If they take you, he said, the story goes live, every file, every name. I did it, every key, every upload. My fingers shook but never stopped. For the first time, I felt powerful, not because I was safe, but because they couldn't silence me anymore. By the next morning, the Falcon files had gone viral. Anonymous leaks flooded social media. Hashtags trended across every major country. Journalists swarmed the story. Politicians scrambled for denials. The photos of Ethan at high-end fundraisers turned from glossy pride to scandalous evidence. The man who once smiled in control was now cornered. And that's when he finally called. "Lina," he said softly, "we need to talk." I almost laughed. "Now you want to talk? You think this is over. You've just started a war you can't win." "No," I said. "I started when you can't hide." His voice turned venomous. "You really think you'll survive this? You think your little journalist can protect you?" "I don't need protection, Ethan. I need proof. And now I have it." He went silent, then almost a whisper. "You have no idea who these people are." "Then maybe they should know who you are." He hung up. Hours later, Anders sent me a message. One of their people flipped. They're nomming Ethan in testimony. The plan was working. The exposure had begun. But victory in stories like mine never comes clean. Because that night, as I hid in a motel on the edge of the city, a car pulled up outside. A silhouette stepped out, familiar, tall, moving with the confidence of someone who used to share my bed. "Ethan." He didn't knock. He didn't shout. He just slid a note under my door. I waited a minute before picking it up. In his neat handwriting, it said, "Check the news before you celebrate." I turned on the TV. The headline froze my blood. Investigative reporter M. Anders found dead. Car explosion outside city. My heart stopped. He was gone. My one ally, my one voice, silenced. And on the screen beneath his name, the words scrolled slowly. Anonymous sources suggest connection to leaked Falcon files. They'd killed him, and they were blaming me. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in that cheap motel room with the walls humming from the highway outside, and I made myself one promise. If they wanted me gone, they'd have to bury the truth with me. Because tomorrow, I would make sure everyone heard my voice. They thought killing Anders would end the story. They didn't know I was the story. That night, I sat in the dim motel room, staring at the static on the TV until my reflection blurred into white noise. Fear had stopped being a feeling. It was just air now, something I breathed in and exhaled through my resolve. I wasn't going to hide anymore. If silence was their weapon, then my voice would be mine. At sunrise, I opened my laptop and logged into the auto-release portal Anders had set up. He was gone, but his system was. His failsafe had been beautiful, simple, unstoppable. All I had to do was hit confirm. I typed one line into the live message box that would appear at the top of every article, every leaked video, every feed connected to the Falcon Files network. "My name is Lina Cooper. You silenced the reporter, but you will not silence the wife who knew too much." I hit send. Within minutes, the world knew my name. The first wave was chaos. News channels across continents picked up the leak. Talk shows dissected my words. "Who is Lina Cooper?" they asked. "Is she real? Is she alive?" And then the second wave hit. Proof. Anders' encrypted data dump detonated across global servers. Hidden ledgers, voice recordings, and photos tying Ethan and his syndicate to half a dozen offshore crimes. Forensic experts verified it. Interpol got involved. And the politicians who'd once smiled next to Ethan began to scatter like roaches in light. Within 24 hours, the Falcon Syndicate was front-page news. And within 48, Ethan's face was on every screen in America, not as a philanthropist, but as a fugitive. He called one last time. The same number, the same calm. "You think you've won," his voice cracked for the first time. "I don't need to win," I said quietly. "I just need you to lose." He laughed, a hollow sound, like a man cornered in his own arrogance. "You ruined yourself too. You'll never have a normal life again." "I don't need normal," I said. "I just need truth." Then I ended the call. And this time, I didn't tremble. The arrest came 2 days later. They found him at a private airstrip, trying to flee the country with a duffel bag full of diamonds and fake passports. The same ones he'd once told me were for business trips. When the headline broke, Ethan Cole, aka Andrew Cooper, arrested in global money laundering scandal, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the gentle kind, but the kind born after fire. Weeks passed. I testified under protection, wearing a wig, a fake name, and a heart that still beat too fast at shadows. But this time, the fear didn't own me. A government official told me quietly after the hearing, "You could have taken a deal. Why go public?" I looked him in the eye. Because too many women are forced to stay quiet when powerful men lie. I wasn't saving myself. I was proving it's possible to survive them. He didn't have an answer. Months later, I stood on a small hill overlooking the ocean, the same coast where Owen had disappeared. His body was never found, but the authorities had confirmed what I already knew. Ethan had ordered his death. I left a flower in the tide and whispered, "Thank you for saving me, even after you were gone." Then I turned and walked away. I rebuilt my life under a new name, Maya Carter, the same alias Owen had once used to protect me. I started writing under it, not about crime or pain, but about resilience, about the invisible strength women find when the world tries to break them. Every story I told carried a trace of my own. The woman who found her power after being betrayed. The wife who knew too much and lived to tell it. And every time I hit publish, I smiled. Because somewhere, in some corner of the world, another woman was reading and whispering. If she survived, maybe I can too. In a world built on silence, truth is rebellion. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is simply speak, even if her voice shakes. Because the moment you stop hiding from the truth, the people who thrived on your fear start running from it. So if someone ever tries to make you doubt your instincts, believe them anyway. If they try to make you feel small, rise taller. Because survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying loud.
If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen play out?